Morning, everybody. Jam-packed Monday here on GoJo and Golic with plenty to get into coming off the NFL weekend. The Philadelphia Eagles flying high. Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown air it out. Is it going to be enough to silence the doubters for Philadelphia down the stretch? And the college football playoff begins this week. One contender just lost their quarterback to the portal. Their backup quarterback, Pribula from Penn State, jumping into the portal. What does it mean for the Nittany Lions, and what can we do about this going forward? And the Buffalo Bills roll versus the Detroit Lions. Is this finally the year that Josh Allen and the Bills both lift some hardware? All that and more coming up on GoJo and Golic right now. What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. here. We got a great show for everybody. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review us. Leave us a 5-star rating. And check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. Fun one coming up today. Marshall Newhouse going to join us as he always done. This is the start of hour number 2. Go over everything that we saw in the NFL weekend, including one where we saw a lot of large excellence on display, from D linemen picking off passes with monster stiff arms, O linemen getting in the end zone multiple times. Life was great. Marshall is going to be our Sherpa on that. And selfishly on the home front, Pete Sampson, the Notre Dame beat writer over at The Athletic and co-host of The Independent, going to join us coming up in about 20 minutes here, Dad, as we get to pop bottles. Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame announced the extension. He's sticking around in South Bend for another 6 years in total now, 4 years added to the 2 years left on his deal. Expected to make him one of the richest coaches in college football, and expected to make us some of the happiest fans on earth, because we were hearing a little bit too much of that Peter Schrager stuff about the Bears. There's the looming Ohio State thing in the distance, so now we get to put that all to bed as we get ready for game week here. The college football playoff all kicks off on Friday and Saturday, so nice to have this done and good.
Yeah, I'm glad that was taken care of, in advance. Obviously, I know it's the week of the game, but in advance of the game. And while Marcus has had a couple of bad losses against Marshall his first year at NIU this year, he has beaten top 25 teams more than anybody else. He deserves this. And listen, it's a coach's best friend when the rumor mill gets to churning, right? And all of a sudden his name starts to get mentioned for other jobs. It's just there's just a sit at home with your family and just kind of smirk and say, yeah, we're gonna see the coffers get filled a little bit, and that's exactly what happened and exactly what should have happened. So listen, he is great for Notre Dame. He's young, he's energetic. Players love him. They get great recruiting classes. They're winning. I mean, what's not to love about the guy?
Certainly plenty to love there. I also want to get into, Pete, some of the comments that Marcus made about the school's investment overall in other areas around the program. Marcus was quick to point out in his statement that this isn't just an investment in him. And so we'll dig into what that means for Notre Dame contending not only this year, but going into the future with Marcus Freeman at the helm. We'll also get to the biggest injury in sports this weekend, Dad, in the NFL, is Patrick Mahomes and an ankle injury now officially sound the alarms that we've been sort of walking up to for the last number of weeks here. But you just got off the call Sunday Night Football, Packers and Seattle, where I'm not going to lie, it sounded more like a Packers home game than I was expecting at Lumen Field in Seattle ever here, as Green Bay goes and gets a decisive win. But quarterback injury, Dad, certainly the story in this one, as the Seahawks learned what life was like without Geno Smith. And spoiler alert, it was not great.
Yeah, every Green Bay Packer fan who traveled here stayed at my hotel. The line for the elevators to get to my room last night was absolutely brutal. I actually had to stop and get a drink, just so the line till the line went down. I mean, it was they were representing Green Bay extremely well. The Cheeseheads were out, and even before Geno Smith got hurt in this game, which I'll get to, this was a game that Green Bay kind of took over. It was the Josh Jacobs first half. Josh Jacobs had scored 8 touchdowns in the last 4 games. The first drive, Mike, when the Green Bay Packers drove down for a touchdown, was a 10-play drive. Josh Jacobs touched the ball 9 times. He had 7 runs and 2 receptions. The only other person who touched the ball was Jordan Love, scrambled and ran. That was it. In the first half, the Green Bay Packers had 31 plays for 235 yards. Josh Jacobs had 17 touches for 111 yards in the first half. I mean, he was absolutely the A train, and he was running between the tackles, and that's where Seattle had been vulnerable. So he was the difference in the first half. Seattle did a pretty good job of bottling him up in the second half, but Jordan Love started spreading the ball out. Dobbs gets a couple of touchdown receptions, including the one with about 5 minutes to go, to put them up 30-13. And because Seattle was just kind of hanging around, they scored a couple of field goals. It was 20-6. It didn't look like they were going to get back in it. All of a sudden, Josh Jacobs gets the ball punched out of his arms. He fumbles. Next thing you know, Zach Charbonnet is running for a touchdown, and it's 20-13, or it's 23-13, I should say. And they're within 10. There's about 12 minutes to go in the game, so you're thinking there could be hope. Geno Smith, unfortunately, gets hurt. He got hurt on what he thought was a low hit. He actually went into the locker room, and he tried to come back while Sam Howell was running a series. He actually where I was watching him walk on the sideline with a heavy limp, actually picked up his helmet, put it on, went to the sideline I think to try and go in. And I believe somebody said, are you kidding me? Go sit down. And he ended up with an ice bag on his knee. He took a low shot. And for those that are wondering, the technicality of you're not allowed to get hit low if you're a quarterback in the pocket. His legs were in the air when he got hit. So technically, when your legs are in the air, it's not a low hit by the defender, or at least not a penalized low hit. That's the minutia of the flag or the non-flag.
I can understand some of that too, given what Geno was doing, dropping back and going away, because if you're talking about trying to legislate the low hits that go back to the Brady hit out of this, it's tough for a defender diving and trying to make a play while the quarterback's also backing up. So just laws of physics, you're going to end up hitting him lower than you initially thought, even if the defender was a little low to begin with.
Yeah. So Sam Howell came in, couldn't do a whole lot. And Green Bay ended up with 7 sacks, and now Seattle had given up 40 coming into the game. They gave up 7 more. They have a rookie. They ended up with a rookie center because their starter got hurt, a rookie right guard. They were giving up pressure all day on the quarterback. So it's really kind of changed the old, if the season ended today, Seattle is out of the playoffs. and it's the Rams in the number 4 seed. And it's actually Tampa Bay who jumped to the 3rd seed, and the Rams in the 4th seed right now. And Seattle, we don't know about Geno Smith. It's his knee. They are home. Minnesota comes to visit next week, so that's a tough game for them. So it's going to be tough sledding for Seattle going forward.
Yeah, this is one where if Seahawks fans had questions still somehow about Geno Smith and what he affords this team, I hope this was eye-opening. Like, I hope Geno Smith can come back, because if not, the Seahawks season is over. Period. End of sentence. Sam Howell's a player that's got starting experience in the NFL, and certainly, listen, if he's got full weeks to prepare and go back to that, maybe it can get better. But there is a clear delta between him and Geno Smith on the field in terms of what Geno does for you in doing things like help avoid those sacks and still distribute this. Because, Dad, you mentioned all the sack numbers on the season. They had given up none against the Arizona Cardinals last week,
right,
and then gone out and run the ball. It had looked like a lot of the things that had been difficult for Seattle during most of the season had gone away last week in that division win, and they all came rearing back. Run defense, unfortunately, struggling. Protecting the quarterback became an issue, and unfortunately, it led to the injury at quarterback there for them. And this does just go right back to the conversation we had at the end of last week, Dad, where you look at the Los Angeles Rams, and now granted that Thursday night performance didn't really leave anyone impressed, but they were the team that was at least trending in the direction of the team that nobody wants to play right now. And as you look in this division, if you're going to be dealing with a beat-up Geno Smith, the Los Angeles Rams are here and ready to take up the slack, and they look like they are ready for their moment down the stretch.
Yeah, we sit there and talk about the NFC South as the kind of the meh division. That could be the NFC West, because watch out, Tampa Bay all of a sudden scoring a lot of points. Put up 40 yesterday on the Chargers. As I mentioned, they'd be the 3rd seed right now. So it's like it looks like they're taking control of that division. And right now it's tied in the NFC West, but the Rams already beat Seattle one time, so that's why they're ahead. So watch out, Tampa Bay. For a division we said, the winner will just kind of be hanging around. Tampa Bay's showing something, that's for sure.
Yeah, no doubt Tampa Bay announced their presence with authority yesterday. I don't think anyone saw that final score coming, which we can get to at some point. The NFC playoff picture, like you said, very interesting now with them inserting themselves into the 3. The Rams there in a very crowded wild card field where the Washington Commanders are the last in of that group there. But, Dad, I want to talk about the AFC playoff picture, because while the Geno Smith quarterback injury is noteworthy for a Seattle team that's been battling all year long in a crowded division, we got the one injury yesterday that really starts to open up possibility for everyone of what's possible this season, as unfortunately Patrick Mahomes was injured yesterday, an ankle injury on a high-low hit in the 4th quarter, throwing an incompletion on a 4th down that ultimately ended with him walking off the field with a severe limp. And Dad, while him, Andy Reid, and everyone said after the game, hey, he's just sore right now, he's going to go and attack rehab, he probably could have gone back into the game and wanted to, but up 2 touchdowns, they didn't feel the need, and they all echoed their confidence in Carson Wentz. How worried should Kansas City Chiefs fans be, Dad, about what they finally saw happen after all the hits he's endured this year to their star quarterback?
Well, and by the way, you said high-low hit, but it was a clean hit. There was nothing wrong with the hit at all. Perfectly clean.
Yes.
The way that he kind of got bent. You know what? I'm not, unless obviously it keeps him out a while, I'm not really that worried. They have a 2-game lead on Buffalo for the number 1 seed, right? And so they could afford to sit him for a couple of weeks. And I think Carson Wentz is more than capable as a backup quarterback. Listen, Pat Mahomes does Pat Mahomes things. So then that's why, he's the player he is. But statistically, he's not having the greatest year, but he still makes things happen, especially with his legs. So if he has to admit, now they have a short week. They take on the Texans on Saturday, so it's a day shorter. Wouldn't shock me if he missed this game, if he missed a couple of games. Just the bottom line is have him ready for the playoffs, for the run, right? So I'm not, because he possibly could have gone in if it was dire straits and it was a playoff game and they were looking, obviously to advance. I don't think it'll be the rest of the season injury. It might be a couple of weeks. It might not even. He may play Saturday. So I'm actually not overly worried about it.
I'm just more worried about what it signals. This is what we had been worried about all year long with how much Mahomes was getting hit in the pocket because of the tackle situation, which, oh, by the way, led to Joe Thuney starting at left tackle again this weekend, something he had done. He had played left tackle earlier in the year, but they had to move him out there. Mike Caliendo ended up starting at left guard or the backup. And so, Dad, that's the tough part is Joe Thuney fought the good fight, man. You're going up against Myles Garrett, and Christ almighty, being a guard on the perimeter like that has to be terrifying, even for a guy like Joe Thuney who's played all pro football forever. And credit to the Chiefs, they actually did a bunch of things to try and help it. The slide was going Myles' way every time. Isaiah Pacheco was chip helping on basically every release out of the backfield during the course of that game. And Myles Garrett still managed to make that pocket look like a nightmare for Mahomes the vast majority of the day. Dad, they got lucky. They were able to stay ahead of the chains with the run game a lot, and that the Browns just felt like turning it over left and right during this game to really hand it to them, because it was still an issue. And Dad, if you're going to go with that long term, this is the difficulty I always say happens when you decide to shift somebody around in the offensive line like that instead of being able to play a backup, is you have weakened two positions now. While left tackle may get marginally better relative to the standard they had there before, left guard got worse for them. And you saw some of that show up at different points of the time with how the pocket in the interior was there, which forced Mahomes back to bail out there. That one time he ended up getting injured, he was actually able to step up and try and make a play. And so that's still worrisome to me, Dad. And the part of it that becomes the biggest concern is I don't know how this gets better around him in terms of preventing this from happening again in the future.
It doesn't. And, you know, that's why sometimes you don't really look at stats, because the Browns didn't get any sacks, but they had 12 quarterback hits. And it was one of those quarterback hits that put Mahomes out. And the last three teams they play, the Texans, who have excellent edge rushers, the Steelers, guy named TJ Watt, and then the Broncos, whose defense and edge rushers have been playing extremely well. So it's not like the tackle situation is going to improve that quickly now. They have an actual tackle in DJ Humphries, who just came back last week after getting hurt last season, and he hurt his hammy, so you don't know when he's going to be back. And I'm with you. You kind of hurt two positions by sliding your guard out to tackle and putting in your backup guard. But I don't know what their answer is. Their answer is going to be you keep chipping, you keep people in, you help and you protect. You can't just say, well, the next guy's got to step up and do the job. The guy's just going to get beat too quickly, and you're going to get your quarterback killed.
Yeah, to your point about sacks not being the appropriate metric for here, because it's about teams getting close enough often to do damage. And Mahomes, according to Next Gen Stats, was pressured on 18 dropbacks. That's 41.9% pressure rate by the Browns defense. Just to give you an idea, the team in the NFL with the worst quarterback pressure percentage allowed is the Titans with 40.9. So in that game, Patrick Mahomes was pressured at what would be the worst rate for a season for a team there. And so they had plenty of opportunities to go hit and touch him up. And Dad, you brought up the statistical portion of the conversation with Pat. It hasn't looked as good this year for all the reasons around him. Like, that's the other part, is what this does is keeps you from exploring any of the things that might make this roster and this offense the best it could possibly be, because we know and talk about all the time, offensive line, hell, with this team in the past against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, can undermine all of the fun things you want to do, play calling with Andy Reid or arm talent wise with Patrick Mahomes. And so, Dad, this one, while they've got the lead for the 1 seed, the door is as open as I feel like it's been in a while for this Kansas City Chiefs team. Because even in the last couple of years post Tyreek Hill, usually towards the end of the season, they're starting to figure out the roster a little bit. Things are starting to look better. Nothing's really starting to look all that much better for Kansas City right now, at least offensively. And so if you are Buffalo, if you are Baltimore and these AFC contenders that have been waiting in the wings to try and beat this team, this is the best opportunity you're probably going to have in a while. And so it feels a sense of urgency around it this year that's probably even higher than ever before.
Yeah, quite honestly, if Pat Mahomes, even if he was healthy, if Buffalo and Kansas City played next week, I don't know if Buffalo wouldn't be favored in that game. I mean, the way Josh Allen is playing now, their defense, we'll get to that game, has given up a ton of points, but they're scoring a ton of points. And you're right, the one good thing about Kansas City is they've gotten better in the run game, which will help out to protect Mahomes. Pacheco's back. He and Kareem Hunt split 13 carries each. They ran it 35 times. Now, they averaged under 4 yards a carry, but it's still about possession. And they actually won a game by more than one score. Cleveland imploded with 6 turnovers 4 interceptions. Jameis Winston got benched. Dorian Thompson-Robinson came in. He actually threw a pick. They fumbled it 3 times, lost 2. So Cleveland was just given extra possessions to Kansas City. You're not going to make a living off that. So that was, while they almost would have been breathed the sigh of relief saying, wow, we didn't have a 1-score win. Now you have your quarterback who's just going to be getting nonstop treatment to see how soon you can get him back.
Yeah, Kansas City is sitting atop the chart, but as you pointed out right now, the Buffalo Bills are the best team in the AFC, and they went out there and showed that against the cream of the crop in the NFC. We will get to that game certainly coming up in a little while as Josh Allen's MVP odds continue to go through the roof, and the Buffalo Bills look like they have got a title contender, albeit one that has given up a lot of points in the last couple of weeks in this season. But no doubt the wheat starting to separate from the chaff in the NFL as we're seeing contenders load up and begin to prepare for the end of this season run and try and jockey for position around here. Coming up next, though, the postseason getting ready to start in college football. We will talk to Pete Sampson from The Independent about the Notre Dame head coach contract extension and one interesting conundrum for a college football playoff contender who's now going to be without their backup quarterback. Next on GoJo Golic. All right, excited to talk to Pete Sampson here in just a couple of minutes about Notre Dame head coach Marcus Freeman getting the bag. Pete, again, does a great job covering Notre Dame over at The Athletic and is the co-host of the Independent podcast, which is one of the best Notre Dame football podcasts out there. So we'll get to talk with him about that, Dad, but also get to ask him about something interesting that, especially in light of yesterday's news, has popped up as a headline around the college football playoff, is Notre Dame is the only team in the CFP field to not have someone enter the transfer portal in the lead up to these games getting going this weekend. And for Penn State now, who's preparing for SMU this weekend in a game getting played at noon on Saturday, is going to be doing so without their backup quarterback for that very same reason. Bo Pribula, the backup quarterback for Penn State, who is certainly a marked part of what they do here, is third on the team in carries and yards as a rusher, and has been coming in as a backup quarterback, moonlighting when they want to do a little bit more running, announced yesterday on his Twitter that he would be entering the transfer portal and leaving the team, Dad. Now, he cited the overlap of the two. The transfer portal's open right now until December 28th, though teams in the college football playoff have an extra 5 days after whenever their season ends for players to jump in the portal and still visit with teams. But the process of having to go through and go to the visits and do the recruiting process, Dad, makes it really difficult for these players. So is there anything to be done, and how much of this do you put on the young man involved in the decision having to be made here?
Well, I mean, listen, the player is it's a tough position because was it the backup quarterback at SMU? Who went in
Preston
the portal?
Stone, the backup quarterback who was benched after the BYU game, who had split time, is in the portal, but also said he was going to be staying with the team through whatever their playoff run looked like. And we saw that similar sentiment echoed by Kenny Dillingham and ASU about the players there that would be allowed to go in the portal and shop for their future, but he said are welcome to stay with the team through the run.
So that's obviously one answer where you can have your cake and eat it too. Now you run the risk of the possibility of getting hurt, something you don't want to do, because you can be, looking at another team while you're still playing because you've entered the portal. That would be the answer, is to continue to play. But players are making the business decisions for themselves. And I don't know, Mike. I mean, we know after the championship game, there's 5 days, a window of 5 days before the portal, I believe, opens up again. So I don't know what they can do outside of move the portal. But then you have guys, if you have to move it for everybody, you can't just move it for the college playoff guys, because then they don't feel they'll get a jump on it like guys who are just playing in bowl games, who are just skipping regular bowl games to enter the portal and get a jump on the recruitment. I don't know the answer for this outside of go to the portal but keep playing. I mean, listen, he's got good stats, right? He gets relied on for some series on offense, but the bottom line is he's one play away from being the starter. They have a true freshman quarterback who hasn't thrown a pass yet as now the backup to Aller. So that's the scary part, is you are one play away of having a guy who you trust as the backup to now a true freshman as a quarterback.
It's an impossible decision for the player at this point, because for Bo Pribula, he's also not a high-end quarterback prospect. He's not going to be one of the, most coveted guys in the marketplace here. And so you do have to go out there and I'm sure play the game a little bit more. He's worried about his future, and I can't fault him for that, given the way the timelines line up for this. I have a pro-player bias. I fully admit it. But I'm going to have a hard time coming down too hard on a player who's put in a situation based off this system here that's pretty tough. Yes, he could stay through the team, but with the team. But to your point, Dad, gets used a lot in the run game, as do both of these Penn State quarterbacks. And so I think this is going to be something that's got to be a larger conversation about the system, the academic calendar for the second half of the year that pushes up and kind of forces this into the window it's in now, to try and see how they can make this more palatable for players and teams alike, so that we're not faced with this choice here. I get everyone's got a choice, and we see it with the opt-outs with the other bowl game, but this one's certainly a little bit more severe, because it's basically asking players to leverage their present against their future in the sport in a way that just does not seem like it should be a part of the model.
Yeah, because those who don't know, the portal opened up a week ago. Last Monday it opened up, and there are already over 2,000 players in the portal. And this is just, people can moan about it all they want, but it's not going to change. Players are going to go into the portal. Now, will they change the time you can go into the portal? Will they try to adjust for this? Maybe, we'll see, but they haven't done that yet. So players know that they can't fall behind in the portal in the recruitment from other teams, or they may lose a spot. So it is a very, very difficult position. And I'm sure people would say, listen, other players are going in the portal and they're continuing to play. That's the answer. Continue to play. But you also run the risk. You definitely run the risk of getting injured. You're making a business decision to leave, to go play for another school, to show your wares, and you don't want to be doing that if you're injured and rehabbing an injury.
not unprecedented by any means either. Malik Murphy, the backup quarterback for Texas, did this exact same thing last year in a 14 playoff field with the Longhorns and their playoff matchup with Washington. He ends up going into the portal and landing at Duke, now back in the portal this year after a season there. So unfortunately, we've seen this before. And Dad, you mentioned for Penn State and the micro for this. I wonder how much this changes because of what you mentioned with the thinness now at quarterback for a team that is at their best on offense running. I get, Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, both great players in the backfield. The offense is at its best when the quarterback's a part of the run game. Drew Aller had, I think, over 50 yards rushing in the Big Ten championship game. Bo Pribula had some rushing yards in there as well. Now, are you less inclined to include Drew Aller in that quarterback run game, in part of your ground game in general, because you know how thin the depth chart becomes behind him? This could legitimately swing and change part of the game plan going into this SMU game. And so I think for that now, and the adjustment that James Franklin and company have to make on offense is going to be fascinating to see. Do you go for broke because you're not promised tomorrow in any of these games and going up against a quality opponent, or do you kind of have to play it a little bit closer to the vest because of what we just mentioned?
Yeah, I think you're going to have to play a little closer to the vest, rely on those, as you mentioned, Allen and Singleton, the two running backs. Rely on them for your rushing and know that Aller's been protected well in the pocket. I think he's only been sacked 11 times this year, so the protection on him has been good as far as sacks are concerned. I definitely think it's going to have to, you can't be as freewheeling with him. Obviously, if it's a close game, you have to do what you have to do, but I think they would try and get by with not running Drew as much.
And listen, Drew is not as fleet of foot as Bo. That's why they put Bo into the game, because he was a better runner than him on the edge. But you still saw it in the Big Ten championship game. The proof is in the pudding. The proof's been there for a lot of this year. And so, again, this is going to be a conversation we probably have more and more often. There's a reason Kenny Dillingham's words went as viral as they did, because this is going to be an important part of team building and roster retention, even in the expanded playoff era where more teams have a shot than ever, but more players still have to worry about their future than ever before as well there. No worries about the future in South Bend, Dad. Marcus Freeman, 4-year extension, 6 more years total in South Bend. According to Nicole Arbach and others who reported on this, and I think it was Maria Taylor at NBC who actually had this first, no surprise there, as she was getting ready for Football Night in America. They got to break that news live on TV. This will make him among the highest paid coaches in college football. And Marcus Freeman said, the commitment goes well beyond myself. According to Nicole Arbach, there's an expectation that the staff salary pool is also expected to rank among the nation's biggest. And so I think there's an idea for a lot of people involved, Dad, that this is going to not only raise the price for Marcus Freeman, who earned this based on a 30-9 record, 11-4 against AP Top 25. That's the most AP Top 25 wins by a Notre Dame coach in their first 3 years in the school's history, but also to continue to invest in the program in ways that make them competitive in all aspects of team building from here on out in a way you need to in the modern game.
Well, and the money pool for assistants coaches got bigger as well, and they may need that to keep Al Golden, the defensive coordinator, who's leading one of the best defenses in the country. That's something to keep.
For more on that, Pete Sampson joins us now. Again, you can check him out, doing a great job covering Notre Dame for The Athletic, as well as the co-host of The Independent, one of the best Notre Dame podcasts in the business. And Pete, let's start there. How long had this been in the works? How long had you guys been hearing that a deal was on the desk for Marcus Freeman potentially?
On the desk, weeks, but more than a month. I was talking to a source immediately after the USC game, and Pete Bavacqua, the AD's approach was like, "I need to have this done by Christmas." So he essentially beat that by 10 days. Year 3, it's an inflection point here. You guys know that better than anybody. Like either we're in with you or we're not. And I think as Notre Dame continued to build after Northern Illinois, it became pretty clear that this was going to be, we're in with you with Marcus Freeman.
How much did it get ramped up because of the whispers of Marcus and other head coaching jobs, whether it be in college or the NFL?
It probably drove up the price a little bit. But I mean, Notre Dame wanted to get this done regardless. Like if Ohio State had gone 14-0 and they were cruising and Ryan Day was, beloved in Columbus, they still wanted to get this deal done. My sources indicated, like, as much as there was interest from the Chicago Bears, Marcus Freeman was not interested in making a move to the NFL at this point in his career. So I don't know if that had a ton to do with it, but they were at a point in his contract where they just had to decide, are we going to be all in with you? And like, they've been all in with their coordinator hires, Mike Denbrock and Al Golden. They're all in with facilities, building Shields Hall to open in 2026. So the head coach was sort of the last piece of that puzzle. Sitting here at 11-1, he's definitely earned an extension.
You mentioned that. Dad and I were just talking about it too. Marcus made clear in his statement that this commitment goes well beyond himself. So is there an expectation that there's going to be even more put into, facilities, being able to retain coaches like Al Golden and Mike Denbrock as they go forward by investing there too?
It's interesting because like they sort of already made that investment before the contract extension for the head coach. So I don't know how much actually changes there. They already have two of the highest paid coordinators in college football. Shields Hall is going to run, that's a $100 million facility. Like the NIL house settlement stuff, that when that comes down the pipe, like Notre Dame's going to be fully invested in that. So it's in some ways, I think a lot of schools, the head coach's deal is the first piece of the puzzle, and they drag everything along after that. At Notre Dame, they sort of done it the opposite way, where like they did the everything else, and now you give the head coach the deal, and he sort of has the platform to continue to win big at a potentially a national championship level.
So now, while they can pay their coordinators handsomely, and they have been and can continue to do that, it's still not a head coaching job. What are you hearing as far as Al Golden and the thoughts of him, who wants to be a head coach again, possibly leaving?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't heard there's a specific opening for him. He's definitely not running out of here. And I think that, there are coordinators who are just dying to be a head coach, and they'll take the first thing that they can get. I don't think that's going to be the situation with Al Golden. Like, I would keep an eye on an NFL defensive coordinator role. If something opens up that suits him on a winner, that might be interesting to him. But he's turned down college head coaching interest in the past. And I think unless the right job opens up, that will probably continue to be the case.
Pete, about a minute left here for Notre Dame. Game week now officially here. What's the latest on the availability of some of Notre Dame's biggest stars? We know Jeremiah Love was banged up a little bit in the SC game. Howard Cross out the last couple of games. How is this roster looking heading into this game?
I mean, Marcus Freeman said those guys are both available. They feel like kicker Mitch Jeter is as healthy as he's been in a while. He's certainly struggled down the stretch. So if they can get all three of those guys back, they expect clicking at a high level, then they're sort of as full strength as they can be on Friday night against Indiana.
Certainly going to be huge for them to have all of those guys ready and raring to go in an environment in South Bend that gets a little bit of in-state feel to it, as hopefully not too much red making its way to Notre Dame Stadium in South Bend, but we'll check in and see on that. Pete, always great catching up with you, man. We appreciate the time and insight. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you again soon, all right?
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Pete.
I guess that is, to Pete's point, the interesting part. They've laid the groundwork with the rest of the staff here. Marcus was that final piece, and hopefully can keep that band together for a while here. Please, Al Golden, don't leave us. Please, God.
Yeah. Listen, that's the question, right? Because you can do whatever you want as a coordinator, but that's not a head coaching job. And I get that he's not running to any head coaching job. He's been a head coach before. He'd be looking for the right one, but I'm with you, boy. If they can keep this staff completely together, and that means Al Golden, that would be a huge win.
Yep, that's why even though this roster is in a good place, there's a sense of urgency knowing that could be hanging off in the distance here. Coming up next, we'll get to some of the best sights and sounds of the NFL weekend. It's Mic'd Up Monday on GoJo and Golic. All right, welcome back to GoJo and Golic. It's time for the aptly named Mic'd Up Monday. Take a look at some of the best sounds from the podium this weekend in the NFL. And no better place to start, Dad, than the Eagles team that gave us plenty of drama at the end of last week. Everyone talking about A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts' relationship. Well, they went out and answered the call on the field. They win the state championship against the Steelers in a game this weekend that featured not one but two Eagles receivers going over 100 yards on the game, including the aforementioned A.J. Brown. And it gave Jalen Hurts plenty of ammo walking towards the podium. Here he was after the game, a little something for the media.
So that's what y'all wanted to see, huh?
Jalen, you said you'll figure this out. Is that what we saw tonight?
We found a way to win the game.
All right, we can say whatever. We'll talk about the performance. That looked like one of the coolest dudes I've ever seen in my life here. The Kangol walking up with a diamond that looked like an iPhone 6 strapped to his neck here, distracting the hell out of me. Jalen came ready for his moment at the podium, Dad. There's no doubt about that.
Oh, yeah. Listen, I mean, after the drama last week, which was self-created, by the way, let's not forget that. It was self-created.
Well, not by him. It was by, A.J. Brown was the one that brought that, him and BG, right. I should say.
Exactly. But there was a reason for it. And listen, they came out and they answered the bell. And they did what we had talked about, get A.J. Brown involved early in the game. And they did get him involved early in the game. I mean, it was the amount of, they had 32 passes and 42 runs. They averaged just over 3 yards a carry, but it was ball control, as was seen by controlling the ball for the last 10 minutes of the game. Their last TD drive was in the beginning of the fourth quarter.
The last drive of the game was
21
yards. Plays and 10 plus minutes. 21 plays and 10 plus minutes. They got the ball with 10 minutes and change left, Dad, and the Steelers never got to touch it again. That is nirvana for offense, salting it away, 4-minute offense play calling. It's the best you'll see in the league.
And their scoring drive before that, they scored with just like 40 seconds into the fourth quarter, was 13 plays and 74 yards. So absolute ball control with the passing game, with the rushing attack. 21 plays. I mean, that's an offense. You guys always talk about a 4-minute offense, a 5-minute offense, close out the game. Don't let the opponent get the ball back. It was 10 minutes and 29 seconds against that Pittsburgh defense, which is a really, really good defense. But Philly showed it. It's Philly and Buffalo showed that they may be the two top teams in the league right now.
Yeah, no question. And that Steelers defense we knew was going to be more fearsome on the ground. They were a better run defense than a pass defense. That showed up, and it's would Philadelphia have the off-speed pitch? And I can understand some of the defiance from Jalen Hurts, who's a guy that feels like all I've done is go out and win and improve and take this team to a Super Bowl and out-duel Mahomes despite the final score in that game here. Haven't I earned the benefit of the doubt? But after 3 straight games under 180 yards passing, Dad, and how simple and shaky the Eagles' passing offense had looked at times, that frustration didn't come out of nowhere, and the questions were justified, and Jalen did come out and answer them now. Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown going over 100 yards in the same game for the 4th time as teammates. That's the most by any Eagles duo in franchise history, and I think that was important, Dad. I think it was important for them to put that on tape and put that on wax to show us, not tell us, that yes, come playoff time, we're going to be able to win games multiple ways.
23 of the 32 targets went to Brown and Smith. 23. Only 9 were split amongst 2, 4, 5 other receivers. So, I mean, they are the heart and soul, and Jalen Hurts passed for 290 yards. So at least for this game, they showed they have a passing attack.
I mean, there was a point in time this year early in the season when I remember some people bringing up, especially after he came back from injury the first time, that A.J. Brown could have a lay to the MVP of this team in terms of his importance, his impact, and what he does to opposing defenses. I know Saquon's in the middle of the MVP run, but that game reminded you yesterday that those guys in that passing attack have a gravity as well that's going to be incredibly valuable to this team. And so Jalen gets to get up in the press conference and talk his talk.
And by the way, Saquon Barkley had 65 yards. So in the 3 games left, he needs to average 139 yards a game. He needs 418 total. Going to be tough to do. I think, as I said, if he broke Eric Dickerson's record, he was going to win the MVP. But I think that's going to be very, very difficult to do. And it is squarely that trophy in the hands of Josh Allen right now.
He's got the NFC East up in the remaining portion of their schedule, so anything is possible given those run defense. We will see. You mentioned, though, the Eagles sitting atop the NFC mountaintop. Part of that is because the Buffalo Bills went out there and put it on the Detroit Lions. And part of what happened with the Lions, Dad, questions they're going to get and Dan Campbell's going to get about an inexplicable decision to go onside kick with 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter to try and get back in the game. Here was Dan Campbell talking about that decision after at the podium.
I thought we'd get the possession, I thought we were going to get that ball. And it was one of Bates' best kicks that I've seen him have. That was a big kicker at the end. That thing took a good jump on us. And Hollis made a heck of a play on it. And, obviously now sitting here hindsight after them taking it down to the 3-yard line, I wish I wouldn't have done that. But it is what it is.
Now, Dad, this game still featured a ton of offense for the Lions. Jared Goff threw for almost 500 yards and 5 touchdowns in this game to try and claw them back in, but Buffalo got out quick. And, Dad, that decision, it's just one where in a world where the surprise onside kick got taken out of the rules, I just don't know if there's any defense for that decision. Yes, you're trying anything to get back in the game at this point, but with how low the likelihoods are of recovering an onside kick, to go for it with that much time left in the game. I love Dan Campbell. I'm never going to come down on him too hard because the team goes along. They buy in with his decisions. They're not surprised by all of that. But that doesn't mean that this was a good decision that I think has a lot of backing to it.
No, and obviously hindsight being 2020, he wishes he wouldn't done it. We all wish we had hindsight because it would be 2020 at all times. Listen, he's a gambling guy, and they have been winning, so it's all great, right? It's all gravy. You went for it here, you didn't make it, but we're still winning. You did this, you didn't make it, but we're still winning. Well, they lose a shootout, 90 points scored in this game, and I think one of the reasons is they could not get their running game involved because for most of the game, they were down 2 scores or more. So they had to pass their way. As you mentioned, Jared Goff threw the ball 59 times. They only ran the ball 15 times in this game. So they really couldn't run their offense the way they wanted to because they were down at least 2 scores for much of the game. So credit Buffalo. But again, Buffalo, credit the offense. It's 2 games in a row where they scored over 40 and gave up over 40. So we know they can win a shootout, though. That's for sure.
Yes, we know they can go and win a shootout, and we know that Josh Allen right now, deservedly, after a 6-touchdown game where he had 3 passing and 3 rushing in the game prior, in this one he goes 2 passing TDs, 2 rushing TDs in this one, and continues to be the heartbeat of an offense that can go downhill and hit you with hammers and bats as well as anybody here. They gave that Lions defense a taste of their own medicine, and oh, by the way, Dad, Josh Allen, we talked about on Friday, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL against the blitz, was blitzed on 39% of his dropbacks by a Lions team that continues to hemorrhage bodies on defense and ends up going 9 for 13 for 124 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Dad, that's the biggest concern for a Lions team that's looked like the best team in the NFL for so long. When is enough going to be too much? You already had 13 guys on IR on defense. You add likely 3 more coming off this game with some of the injuries that they suffered there. The Lions on defense may have lost Khalil Dorsey, obviously scary hit there, had him carted off the field.
Yeah.
Defensive tackle Aleem McNeil, cornerback Carlton Davis, all during this game. Dan Campbell saying it's likely they're lost for the season. At some point, Dad, the dam just breaks, and I'm worried that right now with the way that the Lions are trending, that defense may end up becoming the Achilles heel that ultimately stops them short of the Super Bowl trip they looked like was in store for them.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's the one thing that you can't predict, that you can't control, is not only getting injured players, but when they get injured, do you get some back or do you lose some toward the end of the season? Now, last week they had got some back, but now they lose a couple of more. So it's just one part of the game, and depth can only go so far in a 53-man roster of guys filling in and playing at a high NFL level that's needed, especially in the playoffs. So that absolutely is a concern.
Yeah, so very worried about that one. But again, with Dan Campbell and this onside kick, since they changed the rules, it's gone down to about an 8% recovery rate. That's a lot different gambling math than 4th and 1, than going for 2 at the after you score a touchdown, where the odds are closer to in your favor. This one here is just such a non-play in the NFL at this point that unfortunately I think going to that as a weapon was desperation that they needn't have gone to in that spot. Josh Allen, we mentioned, might have cemented his MVP this weekend here, although I actually think his biggest challenger down the stretch is going to be Lamar Jackson, Dad, who had a monster game against the New York Giants this weekend, including one run down the field that had a lot of people asking questions. Lamar Jackson takes off out of the pocket and appeared to be trying to hold up his own pants throughout the entirety of the run. Here was the two-time MVP on the wind at his backside.
I think in the first half where it looked like you're maybe having to hold up your pants. All
right, so look, they was asking me that, so I'm like, I felt like wind was touching my butt, so I was trying to keep my tights up for real. I feel like the tights just like got a little loose or something. I don't know. So I was like just trying to keep my pants up, but that's all it was. It was too cold out there.
Forget the wind beneath his wings, Dad. He had the wind between his cheeks, apparently, on that run here. Something you've got personal experience with.
Yeah, I do. First off, I thought he had injured something, right? And was grabbing it. That was my fear, because obviously they need his running ability. And I thought, oh man, did he pull something by his hip or his thigh? But yeah, he was just trying to keep the wind off his butt. Yeah, I was 10 years old, playing Little League football, and I was the quarterback, and we ran the option. I was the biggest player on the team, but I played quarterback on offense. So I actually had a good fake into the line, and I pulled the ball and started to run, and I had open field. And the only person that knew, everybody was going nuts like I was going to go the whole way. The only person on the field that knew I wasn't going to make it all the way was me, because I wasn't fast enough. I knew I was going to get caught. So as I was running down the sideline, the first guy went to tackle me. And as I said, I was the biggest guy on the team. So everybody on the field, everybody was smaller. The first guy dove and put his arms around my waist and kind of fell off. But he fell off and my pants came down and I was still standing. I was still in bounds, standing. So I kept running, but it was like a shuffle because my pants were at my ankles. And all I could do was shuffle. So now you knew I was going to get caught. So I got hit by like 2 or 3 guys out of bounds. I hit the ground, I roll over, and I look up, and I'm right in the middle of all the cheerleaders. So I'm a 10-year-old laying on the sideline with my pants at my ankles in front of cheerleaders who are 10 years old. So, yeah, that was a tough moment.
Thank God for sturdy jock straps in that situation is all I have to say here. And thank God the NFL technology around pants is better than that. We've seen Lamar Jackson do the shuffle to the locker room, but that was during Poopgate and not during the body of an actual game here. A game where, oh, by the way, Dad, Lamar Jackson became the first quarterback in NFL history to pass at over 80% clip for over 250 yards, 5 passing touchdowns with no interceptions, and add 50 yards rushing. I get it was the Giants defense, Dad, but he's second in the odds on DraftKings Sportsbook right now for MVP. And for my money down the stretch, I think he is going to actually present the better challenge to Josh Allen just because he is eclipsing his own MVP season from last year by leaps and bounds.
Oh, I agree. I think it's him, Josh, fighting for it unless Saquon starts to make that run again toward Eric Dickerson. And listen, I know it was the Giants, and it was the Giants led by Tommy DeVito and Tim Boyle, but the Giants' pass defense is a top pass defense in the NFL. They're statistically one of the better pass defenses, but Lamar, as you mentioned, 21-25 for 290, 5 touchdowns, no interception. They got the running game going, ran for 170 yards. Obviously, the opponent overall, the Giants, were not a match for Baltimore, and boy, they showed up big time.
Yeah, some of those passes, those dots to Rashad Bateman in the end zone. Lamar Jackson as a passer this season, 35 passing touchdowns, I believe now, on the season. So he just continues to add to an already incredible repertoire for him. The Baltimore Ravens, we know, going to be questions about the defense going into the postseason, but the offense has got them covered. Speaking of that, we got you covered. Hour number 2, Marshall Newhouse going to stop by and break down all the large excellence we saw this weekend in the NFL. Next on GoJo Golic. All right, before we get to Marshall Newhouse, let's get to a DraftKings crowning moment from this weekend, Dad. We talked about Josh Allen having a prolific outing here. For one bettor, it made them a whole lot of money. Shout out to Nick Steve 101 for this crazy four-leg bet that took Josh Allen for a $380 bet, netting him $161,880, thanks to betting Josh Allen over 350 passing yards, to score the first touchdown, to pass for 2+ touchdowns, and to rush for 60+ yards here on an insane stat line that somehow became true. Crowning Moments is presented by DraftKings. Submit your winning bets for a chance to be featured. DraftKings, the crown is yours, or in this case, the money is yours, courtesy of Josh Allen. Coming up next, the crown belongs to Marshall Newhouse. He joins us in hour number 2 on GoJo Golic. All right, welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Plenty to get to in hour number 2 still here, including the Heisman Trophy ceremony, which already feels like it was years ago on Saturday that saw Travis Hunter lift the hardware and somehow became controversial to some people. I was amazed at some of the reaction that I saw surrounding the Heisman Trophy and the decision ultimately made. We will get to that in a little bit, but right now, this is a weekend that saw so many big boys making plays that we're always excited to talk to Marshall Newhouse, 11-year NFL veteran offensive tackle, Super Bowl champion. We're excited to talk to him every week as you can get ready to see him in the pregame power-up with everyone else in that crew, DraftKings Network, 6 o'clock Eastern, Monday and Thursday. But Marshall, your experience in particular here, as a big man who had hands here, Marshall's sending me text message footage of him back in his TCU days, going and skying for balls here. Marshall, what's it like for you every time you see the big fellas go and get loose the way Dan Skipper, Tavondre Sweat on defense with the stiff arm did this weekend, knowing that this was a big part of your life?
Listen, these guys are showing that we are the best all-around athletes on the field. There's just not a lot of doubt about that. And at least they're finishing with touchdown. At least Dan Skipper is finishing with a touchdown, showing that he could be a weapon. He's 6'9", every bit of 330, 340, and is just a mismatch on the field. I don't know what you do. Throw to him every time. I don't know.
Their linemen are showing skill. It's not just the passes where they're already in the end zone. It's passes where they're on the field, and Skipper had to run 5 yards to go in. Sweat, obviously, with the stiff arm, showing that D linemen are the superior athletes on the field, I would imagine.
Listen,
well, Marshall,
don't get personal.
How do you go about this conversation with the coaching staff when you are a big man who is able to go and do these great things? Like, you were a guy with a silky set of mitts on you here. And so how do you go about broaching that with the coaching staff to make sure that you got plays in the playbook?
Listen, I think they alluded to it during the broadcast with Penn Sewell. You just got to start going out to pre-practice, showing them that you can throw, showing them that you can catch, just subtly hey, coach, look, hey, look. And then eventually when they're drawing up game plan for goal line, that's how you start. And then short yardage out in the field, that's how it starts. And then these big jumbo packages like our guy Skipper here. And you hope that one of them has the guts to call it in a game. And you just have to make it count, because what's riding on the line is your future play call and every other lineman after you's future play calls. If you blow it, they're losing confidence. So there's a lot on the line.
I tell you, it maybe started back in '85 with William Perry taking the handoff as a fullback and eschewing giving the ball to Walter Payton, and you give it to William the Refrigerator Perry to let the big man score. So big men scoring or big men running with the ball, always a cool thing. Not so cool, Marshall, this Buffalo defense. How much of a worry do we need to have with that, giving up 40 points the last couple of games?
Listen, the Rams game was a little bit of an alarming situation. Obviously, I think I called for them to kind of have a little setback after the big win against San Francisco, then going across country, and the Rams team being really, really healthy. But this Detroit game, you're okay giving up that many points because you were ahead of them by 10 to 14 points the entire game. Maybe you don't want to shoot out. Maybe you want to see more stops there. But the Detroit offense has been gunning all year. And so the fact that you can get up on them a couple scores and they were in chase mode the entire game, that's where Buffalo would like to be. They like playing in more sit-back zone, but you saw early in the game they were taking their chances, blitzing Jared Goff, putting pressure on him. And once you got up, they weren't going to let Detroit use the run game as effectively as they normally do. And so that's the game that Buffalo, I think, wants to play. And yeah, ultimately, you're going to come up against the Baltimores, the Kansas Cities, the Pittsburghs, who aren't going to let you just completely control the game like that. And you're going to have to get some stops and more timely stops. But, they had just a triage unit on defense. They're changed the entire scheme pregame because of injuries. And so they're doing anything they can just to get what needs to be done. And it looks like it was effective enough to get the win against what a lot of people thought was the best team in the league.
Well, that was going to be my next question, Marshall, because the Lions not only lose, but lose 3 more defenders in the process for a team that already had 13 on IR. You couple that with the Eagles' result over the weekend where they answered some questions, at least in their mind, about the passing attack. Are the Eagles the best team in the NFC now going forward based on health and the trajectory we have?
I don't think we have to flip-flop them like that. I think Detroit's still the best overall team, but the injuries that they've overcome, we can't not give them credit for doing what they've done thus far with the injuries they've had. It'll be difficult to continue to do that, but I still think they're the best team. But the Eagles are just closing the gap. It's neck and neck to me, especially from a talent standpoint. And then now these guys went to group therapy between Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown. And, it helps to get your Heisman Trophy winner involved. How about that? That's kind of crazy. And Devontae Smith. And so to me, talent-wise, they're right there with Detroit. But I still think Detroit's the best team until proven otherwise.
And speaking of talent, the Chiefs actually get a more than 1 score win, kind of a comfortable win against Cleveland. But Patrick Mahomes goes down with the ankle injury because he got one of the 12 hits that he took. How concerned are you with that offensive line especially at the tackle position?
I mean, very, very. Even leading up to this week, it was 2 straight weeks of double-digit pressures. He's just getting hit over and over and over again, and he's Pat Mahomes. He puts his cape on when he needs to. But even with them winning, we knew this just wasn't sustainable. And DJ Humphries out with a hamstring injury. I don't know what they do at this point. I don't think there's any other free agents out there to go and save them. Andy Reid's a guy who has always had a creative streak in his play calling to help protect, de-emphasize weak areas and emphasize strength. So a lot more string game, creative protection packages with chips and play action. It seems like there's just limits to what you can do when you don't have guys who can hold up on the edges like they need, at least for a guy like Pat Mahomes. And so it helps that you've got an elite inside 3 that keeps the pocket relatively clean, but he cannot keep getting hit like this. The ankle injury, they described him as week to week. But from the game plan standpoint, a team that's not a complete mess like Cleveland is going to make them pay, and it's going to be at the most inopportune times. They've got to figure something out.
Yeah, I think for them, you look at the AFC contenders, Buffalo with a hugely impressive win. The Kansas City Chiefs get a big win, but at a cost. And then there's the Baltimore Ravens, Marshall, who get this win against the Giants. Lamar Jackson puts out an insane stat line to further him trying to push Josh Allen in the MVP conversation here. But we knew what the Ravens' flaws have been all season long here. Have we learned anything new about them, or is it still going to be waiting to see what that defense on the back end looks like against high-end competition in the playoffs?
No, you named it. It's going to be until someone can threaten their secondary in a high-pressure situation is where we'll find out what the Baltimore ceiling is. Because we know Lamar Jackson will show up in the big games. He has the capacity to throw for 5 touchdowns. But again, that was the Giants. And then it's gonna come down to how they perform on defense against Josh Allen, against potentially Mahomes, against Russell Wilson and the Steelers. And so that is what this team has been set up for. I think they're okay with those expectations because they'd rather be playing in these important games for playoffs and for championships than worrying about the regular season. So they've got another week to figure things out. They walked through New York pretty simply. But yeah, their back end, after losing Mike McDonald and having Zach Orr as our defensive coordinator, has been pretty porous this year. And so that's going to be something that, whether it's added pressure, off the edges, more simulated pressure, or different cover shells behind them, they're going to have to dial that in because it's a big weakness, something that's been exposed in the bigger games this year.
So we have 2 Monday night games tonight. Let's start with Bears at Minnesota. Minnesota with 2 losses, Detroit with 2 losses. Minnesota, the 5 seed right now, but they're in contention for a division title with Detroit. So the Bears really in a spoiler mode. We've all played long enough to be in that position where you are in the spoiler mode. I mean, Chicago should not be able to, but when guys are playing a little free and easy, when there's really nothing to play for, sometimes you get some really good play.
Yeah, I mean, especially I would characterize it as guys are in tryout mode. There's going to be a new head coach. They're trying to put things on tape. Outside of Caleb Williams and DJ Moore, everybody's job is up in my head. That's how I view it. And so, yeah, they're trying to play spoiler. They're trying to enjoy these last few weeks before it's Mexico season. But they've got to find a kind of rhythm to start the next season, the off season, off with a little bit of momentum. This is a team that we had at least the defense we had high hopes for. There was some subtle, bright spots coming out of camp for the offense behind Caleb Williams, and they just disappointed us over and over again. Now, I think that the moves they made considered that maybe the coaching staff wasn't up to snuff. And so this interim staff, you imagine, is not going to look the same. But from a player standpoint, the senior, your resume is the eye in the sky. I mean, every snap you're taking is for the next coach to evaluate and for a potential next team to evaluate. And so, yeah, in division, this NFC North that's been so highly contested, they want to play spoiler and make Minnesota work for it. But you're also, you're fighting for building blocks of next season if you're Chicago Bears.
On the Minnesota side, Marshall, who do you give the edge to between them and Green Bay? We know they played earlier in the season and Minnesota won, but you look at the Packers, their only losses to the Detroit Lions, to the Vikings, and the Eagles early on in the season, and certainly been surging as of late. Who do you think behind Detroit in that division has the best shot of making a deep postseason run between those two?
I mean, Green Bay looks really good. They're playing exceptional football right now. From last night's game in Seattle, Jordan Love looks dialed in. I think Minnesota still by a hair. If they can continue to get Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson like in sync with Sam Darnold, and kind of protect him from his worst nature, which is when he gets blitzed and pressured. If they keep him ahead of schedule and keep him kind of clean, I still have a little bit of a doubt about Sam Darnold because of these high pressure situations when he does tend to kind of revert into the old pumpkin that is Sam Darnold. But if they keep him clean and he has these weapons that are always getting open, because he can still make every throw on the field, he can show you times of why he was a first round pick. If they get that Sam Darnold and that Jordan Addison and that Justin Jefferson, I still think they have the edge over Green Bay in this division.
As far as Atlanta, and playing the Raiders, Atlanta still, they're on the outside looking in to the playoffs. If and when, we don't know, but if they are eliminated, do you think it's Michael Penix Jr. time? Should they give him time?
Yeah, I don't see why not. But, if they haven't done it to this point, I don't see, obviously they'd be out of playoff contention, but I don't know what their strategy is because, again, when they were drafting, Michael Penix Jr., they said, oh, he's already an older quarterback. What does that mean? How they feel about Kirk Cousins? All those questions are still valid because Kirk Cousins is going to be a year older, coming off of what has not been a great year. Michael Penix is going to be a year older, which we don't say about young quarterbacks, but he was already 26, 27 coming in. And so you have to figure out what you have. You have to figure out what you have moving forward to go with. And I heard it said that maybe if he's not getting his run yet, maybe he's just not ready, and there's a chance of that. We just don't know. We can assume that he might be better than Kirk Cousins throwing, in a 2 or 3 week span, throwing no touchdowns. But if they're out of playoff contention, I would definitely consider it. But they seem to have something to say about that. Kirk Cousins they don't want to upset him. But at this point, listen, if you're Raheem Morris, you've got to figure out who's going to be leading your organization for the next 4 or 5 years, or you might not be around for the next 2 years.
Yeah, no, existential questions on the line, no doubt. Some big investments made this offseason for the Atlanta Falcons. One so far not paying off in the way they thought, and the other is still a car waiting to come off the lot that we'll see in Michael Penix Jr. here. You guys can check out Marshall Newhouse, again, as part of the pregame power-up, DraftKings Network, 6 o'clock Eastern on Mondays and Thursdays. A little doubleheader action tonight here. Marshall, always great celebrating large excellence with you, my friend. Thank you.
Absolutely. We'll add a few LBs to the broadcast anytime.
Absolutely. No, yeah, the combined mass of this set right now go toe-to-toe with most there around the country. But Dad, for the Raiders too tonight, unfortunately, no Maxx Crosby going to be out there. He made the announcement on his social media. He was done for the year with an ankle injury that was going to require a procedure. So certainly wish him all the best in recovery. It's been a lost year for them, but that guy, the ultimate warrior, and certainly someone who is out there for each and every snap for that defense. Coming up next, though, speaking of someone that was out there for each and every snap, a big-time Heisman moment for Travis Hunter as he takes home the hardware this weekend. Next. Dad, while we're getting ready for the college football playoffs, first ever 12-team field to make its debut this upcoming weekend, the Heisman Trophy got back in the conversation this weekend as the best in college football took to New York to try and figure out who was going to lift the hardware, and it ends up being Travis Hunter, the two-way star for the Colorado Buffaloes. He becomes the first player to win national awards on offense and defense and wins the Heisman to cap off, Dad, an incredible run. The Chuck Bednarik Award for the best defensive player, the Biletnikoff for the best wide receiver. He was the AP Player of the Year, the Lott Impact Trophy winner, the Paul Hornig Award winner, and the Walter Camp Award winner, in addition to the Heisman. So capping, no doubt, Dad, one of the most prolific in terms of high-end accomplishment college careers will have ever seen, and I think an understandable vote here, Dad. I am a voter. After the voting, I put out my ballot. I did vote Travis Hunter number 1, Ashton Jeanty number 2, and quarterback Cam Ward number 3. Now, Dylan Gabriel ended up finishing third in the voting there with 24 first-place votes, 52 second, and 340 third-place votes here. But the margin between Hunter and Ashton Jeanty was the one people were focused on here. Travis Hunter won with just over 2,200 points, while Ashton Jeanty had just over 2,000. So not quite the runaway that I know you and others expected in this award. And quite honestly, Dad, I think that's the way it should have been. These were two exemplary seasons. Ashton Jeanty would have been deserving had he won. But I don't know how there can be any dispute or controversy around Travis Hunter winning an award on both sides of the ball, doing what he did this season, playing at an incredibly high level on both sides of the ball, and taking home this award.
No, in fact, I was surprised it was as close as it was. Ashton Jeanty was the first runner-up to have over 2,000 points. The highest before that was Tua Tagovailoa with 1,871 back in 2018. This turned out to be the closest Heisman race since 2009 when Mark Ingram beat out Toby Gerhart. So it was actually closer than I thought. But to me, there is zero controversy. I mean, while Ashton Jeanty had a phenomenal year, and he said what you'd expect him to say. He thought he should have won the Heisman. It'll make him work harder and all those things. But I think Travis Hunter was the easy choice for the Heisman this year.
Yeah, I'm glad it was as close as it was, Dad, and everything you just mentioned there to me was indicative of how special these two seasons were. And maybe part of it is we're just so used to quarterbacks being up there that having these two as a chance to celebrate non-quarterbacks in this award stage was something I really relished. And again, for Ashton Jeanty to show up the way he did all season long, knowing he was the focal point of every defense's focus, to help this team that was in the group of 5 not only make the college football playoff but get a first-round bye, I think was incredible. In addition to the play itself, like you watch this tackle-breaking monster, and no disrespect to Cam Scadaboo, who thinks highly of himself, and I think highly of him, Ashton Jeanty is the best running back in college football, period, end of sentence. And so I'm glad that the final results of this were indicative of just how great his season was.
Cam Scadaboo, by the way, took 5th. I mean, he was just on the outside of an invite to New York looking in. So congrats to him. Bryson Daly from Army was 6th. Tyler Warren from Penn State was 7th. Shedeur Sanders was 8th. Curtis Rourke, the quarterback from Indiana, was 9th. And Kyle McCord, the quarterback from Syracuse, was 10th in this one. I wonder, and I don't have it in front of me. It may have been sooner or not as far back as I thought. But again, we did not have a quarterback win. But when was the last time the top 2 were non-quarterbacks? You know, here we had a two-way player in Travis Hunter and a running back in Ashton Jeanty. We obviously have had non-quarterbacks win before, but I'm just wondering when the top 2 were non-quarterbacks. I honestly don't know.
Well, I mean, the one you mentioned, at the very least, we know 2009 is the backboard, considering you had Mark Ingram win and Toby Gerhart as the runner-up for that you just mentioned there. Although that's a year where most people think, hey, Ndamukong Suh probably should have been up there on the podium given the season that he had for Nebraska in that year. So, but you're right, Dad. It's become a rarity around the sport, and rarity is the perfect way to describe why Travis Hunter won this. We likened it to what Shohei Ohtani's done in Major League Baseball as, hey, Ashton Jeanty's been incredible in the same ways that we saw a guy like Aaron Judge be incredible. But we've seen that. We've never seen it at this level for Travis Hunter, where someone can go out and, my God, Dad, the people burping up snap count as if reducing Travis Hunter's Heisman Trophy down to, well, he just played a bunch of plays, is at all indicative of what this young man's season was for someone who, again, won the Biletnikoff for the best wide receiver. And I get these awards aren't perfect, but he led this team far and away, Dad, in receiving. He was clearly their best defender on the back end there when you want to point to interceptions where he was, I believe, at or tied for the team lead with 4, broke up more passes than anybody on that defense. And just in general, watching defensive backs, you understand stats aren't always going to tell the story because some of these better guys don't get thrown at here. But if you just want to talk about the snap count, Dad, I don't think some of the people who are trying to say that in a way that is a slight against him understand the level of conditioning that is necessary for that, the mental toll it takes to prepare at a high level to go out there and be relied on to be the best guy at not one but 2 positions during a game in a season where, oh, by the way, Colorado was competitive in the Big 12 all the way up to near the end. They controlled their own destiny going into that Kansas game with an inside road to the Big 12 championship. So I get that ultimately Boise State, hey, Ashton Jeanty helped get them to the dance, but it's not like Travis Hunter didn't try his ass off. I get he had Shedeur, but again, I think some of that is just people latched onto an easy storyline. Some of it's disingenuous, but man, the snap count alone and what it takes to prepare for that, Dad, is something that few human beings playing at this level in general have been capable of. And whether or not they were, he went out and actually freaking did it.
I can't even justify people just saying that it was the snap count with what he proved, especially on the defensive side. The offensive side, the stats show what he did. But on the defensive side, you're right, as a corner, you go back when Charles Woodson won this award. I mean, it's not like he had 10 interceptions. I think he had 5, and he had a few hundred yards receiving. He played a little bit both ways as well, but not to the amount Travis Hunter did. So especially as a cornerback, I mean, the better you are, probably the less stats you're going to have as a corner. Now, Xavier Watts last year had, 7, 8 interceptions from Notre Dame, but that's at the safety position when you're playing a little more center field. Not to take anything away from all the interceptions, it's still great. But a corner, basically, when you're a great corner, you're not going to get thrown at. So your stats are not going to be eye-popping stats, but you're getting the job done. There should be zero argument. To me, zero argument. And I get Ashton Jeanty saying he feels he should have won it, and he is the best running back in the country. But I just think there was zero doubt as to Travis Hunter, the ability to play all those plays. And we saw last year when he got hurt and missed some time when he took that shot on the sideline to stay healthy for all those plays. He just got nicked very little this year, but just to stay healthy for all those snaps is a feather in your cap.
The dedication you've got to have to taking care of your body. And you know this, Dad, the amount of film study, and I get it, for some of the high-end athletes, some of the guys who are just walking out of the hospital with more, maybe in theory you might have to do less in the film room or something like that. But by all accounts, Travis Hunter sounds like a guy who is dedicated to his craft. There's a reason Deion Sanders is so proud to throw this guy up right next to his sons in terms of the players that have gone out and accomplished here. And oh, by the way, Dad, interesting enough too, they're getting ready to play in the Alamo Bowl. Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter have both said they're playing in this game here. In a day and age where we talk about so many prospects going out and playing, you've seen those guys announce that they're going to play in the game. Cam Ward has said over and over again he's going to play in the Pop-Tarts Bowl in that game. And so we are seeing the pendulum swing back somewhat, Dad. Now, whether you attribute that to, hey, these guys are financially incentivized, maybe there's things in their NIL contracts that say, hey, you're not going to get paid X amount of money unless you play in these games. There's also the other side for the quarterbacks, Dad, of this quarterback class, as we've talked about, not as heralded as ones in previous years. And so maybe there's a thought that if you've got another opportunity to add good film as these guys are jockeying for position for who's going to be that top overall quarterback, maybe that's a risk worth taking. But Travis Hunter, as a guy who's a legitimate top 5 pick now, no matter what, playing in this game, is really interesting and kind of bucks the recent trend that we've seen.
Yeah, listen, if this guy in the bowl game plays 110, 120 plays, that would be seriously bucking the system of just playing one side of the ball. And you're right about the quarterback, because it's basically seems to be between Shedeur and Cam Ward for the top quarterback spot. And you're talking about the Giants and the Raiders having 2 of the top picks, both needing quarterbacks. Who would go first, who would go second? There seems to be some competition here. But yeah, it's good. While I understand players' business decisions that we make because we have seen higher draft picks play in bowl games and get hurt, and that certainly could make a guy shy away. And I could understand it with a bowl game that has, technically no meaning to it. I get you're being with your teammates, and you're still a teammate, and you're playing the game, but you make a business decision. I think players, the rest of your teammates, understand that. But it is kind of nice to see the pendulum swing and these top players playing their bowl games.
Yeah, Dad, to your point, I got no problem when guys sit out here. I've long been on record with that, man. Hey, the game is the game, the system's the system. And when you got that money on the other side, the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow here, you're right. As a teammate, I'd have been the first one being like, dude, are you sure you want to do this with everything that you've got riding on this? Because we know now bowl games are a little more of a springboard into next year than they are a true celebration of this year. But selfishly, as a fan, to get another chance to watch all of these guys go and play college football in these environments here, that's a win for us. We should be grateful for that. It shouldn't be the expectation at this point for guys that have that much to lose. I can't ask them to go out there and risk it further in that spot, even though I know there's a whole teammate full of guys, some of whom are going to play their last football game ever, and how that goes could be heavily dependent on these guys, Dad. It is still a luxury for us here. And so a cool one to get to say, hey, the Heisman Trophy winner who's not on one of the teams getting ready to go to the college football playoff, we will get to see Dylan Gabriel, who finished third, lead the number 1 ranked Oregon Ducks. We'll get to watch Ashton Genty do his thing for Boise State after their first round bye. And we'll get to see Cam Scatabo do the same thing here as a guy that was also further down that list. But to get to watch Cam Ward and Travis Hunter one more time in college uniforms is a pretty cool thing for all of us here. And I'm sure people do appreciate that.
And we'll get to see Rourke, the quarterback from Indiana, who finished, what did I say, 8th or 9th, to hopefully not have a good game against our Irish.
I wish that young man well in so much of his life, and I want to see all his hopes and dreams come true the same way I want to see all these guys. I know how much work goes into this. I know what so many of these guys have sacrificed to get to this point. I just really hope it doesn't work out for him on Friday here. I'm looking forward to it. I like Kurt Cignetti. I like that team a lot here. And Curtis Rourke has been a huge part of this, Dad. I think, there's another conversation to be had at some point, too. We talk so much about transfer quarterbacks and the impact that transfers have in all of this. Curtis Rourke, transfer quarterback that's helped infuse life into this Indiana team. Dylan Gabriel, transfer quarterback that came over to this Oregon team and is making waves post Bo Nix. And so for all the difficulty we talk, Quinn Ewers now, who's going to be in the playoff leading a Texas team that a lot of people think has a great chance in the 5 spot. He got his opportunity at Texas because he transferred out of Ohio State. And so it's never going to be a perfect process, Dad, in terms of, well, do you keep dipping into the portal? Notre Dame said and made it very clear now they're going to be dealing with the quarterbacks in their roster from here on out. They've gone into the portal the last 2 years. They want someone to be around there for a couple of years and be able to build, but it's always going to be an inexact science and a team-by-team basis for when a transfer quarterback makes sense, because we've seen a lot of examples on the top end, Riley Leonard included, that when you get the right guy in there, it can go and really improve your team in a hurry.
And by the way, a lot of it has to do with how the rest of your team looks. Are you ready to make a run? It's not just the quarterback. It's the rest of the team. How does it look? Is it a veteran team? Are you ready to make a move and you're just a quarterback away? That's why you see these quarterbacks transferring and helping these teams the way they are. As you mentioned, Notre Dame not going to go into the portal there and develop their quarterbacks. But the quarterback a lot of times are that last piece of the puzzle when you feel you have a team that can make a run.
Yep, no doubt about it. So going to be exciting to watch that unfold. But again, congratulations to Travis Hunter. A truly memorable and special season that for him culminates in a very full trophy case that he's going to have to figure out how to lug wherever he is going after this spring and getting paid millions and millions of dollars to play football with here. So he signed the Adidas deal too. His fiance was in tow for all of this. So a young man with a lot going as he gets started for the journey of a lifetime for him through the next level that culminates here in bowl season, though, with the Alamo Bowl. And don't worry, I know we mentioned it very briefly. We will get to the Pop-Tarts Bowl and the trophy unveiled yesterday. I have questions. I have thoughts. We will explore that in its entirety here in just a little bit when we get to this, that, and the third at the end of the show. But coming up next, I want to tap back into the NBA here. Been some weird, cryptic stuff going on in Los Angeles. We have finally heard from LeBron James, who returns to the team here. And we're going to be interested about what this means for the future in Los Angeles for King James. Next on GoJo and Golic. Dad, to quote our friend Stu Gotts, I've officially got my eye on this situation with the Los Angeles Lakers here. Things have been a little bit weird, and I'd say that not just as a now Los Angelino out here taking the temperature, boots on the ground, but just watching what we've seen now. LeBron James returning yesterday after 8 days off and away from the Los Angeles Lakers. We're in that time period. JJ Redick was asked about if he knew when LeBron James was going to be coming back to the team and said he wasn't sure. And all of it just felt very cryptic and strange. And now LeBron returns. He was apparently addressing a sore left foot. And his quote was, "If it was just up to me, I probably would have played." LeBron James said, "It would have been hard to keep me away from it. I have a team and I got to listen to them as well. They look out for my best interest here. It was a lot of rehabbing, a lot of training to still make sure that I was ready to go. Didn't want to get too much out of shape." Dad, are you buying that this absence was just as simple as LeBron James getting a little bit of a gap in their schedule because they didn't make it to the NBA Cup, so they only had like 2 games in 10 days? Are you buying this as a legitimate reason, or is there more we should be worried about with this Lakers team?
I don't see how I can buy it. It's not the norm. And I guess with LeBron, maybe you expect not the norm at times, but it's not the norm. If you're injured, you show up at the facility, you get treatment. You're obviously not practicing or playing, so you're getting rest. I don't understand why you're away from the team. And it wasn't really explained. It was just put as, if it was up to me, I probably would have played. But okay, that's one thing that you're not going to play. You're not going to play 82 games this year. So you're rehabbing your foot. You're resting by not playing. But why are you not with the team? I don't understand that at all. I mean, maybe there is an explanation. We didn't get it, but I don't understand it.
Now, Dad, I look at it this way, and as always, guys don't always owe us an explanation. If there was something truly going on in LeBron's personal life or with his family and they're trying to do right and just divert attention away from that, then we always want to be sensitive to that. But if we're going to take everyone at their word with all of this, then there's either twofold issue with this. One is it's a foot injury severe enough, and LeBron James said, I'm not out of the woods with this, by the way. This is going to be something he has to continue to manage going forward as the conversation about him, the 82 game load, had come up with JJ Redick saying that might not be in our best interest or in his best interest to be out there playing that much, and managing his minutes going forward is going to be a premium. So either the foot injury was severe enough to where he needed to go and explore every possible option with his team and do so nowhere near a basketball here, or there's something else going on inside this locker room that would prompt LeBron James to want to be away from the team. And either way, Dad, it's not great when the LeBron James conversation right now seems to be, by and large, the outside possibility of him joining Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors, and us getting to see those guys run down the court together smiling the way that we've seen in the Olympic team of the NBA All-Star game.
Yeah, that was a thought. If he's away from the team, are they exploring a trade? Because this team didn't do anything really in the offseason, right? They're a play-in team right now. They're sitting in the 10th slot. They're 14-12. There's no way LeBron's playing the rest of the games. There's no way AD is playing the rest of the games. They do have to manage their minutes. That's just the practicality of the league now with players that, especially LeBron's age, which we're in a new world of a guy playing this well at that age, that you want him more ready for the playoffs. So they're going to, it seems, probably going to be a play-in team.
And that's, been the case for the last couple of seasons. So my worry is that this starts to feel very Aaron Rodgers Jetsian if we're not careful soon. Just seeing right now the effect of the sands of time and injury on older bodies in sports, no matter how great these players are. We've already seen the LeBron James versus Father Time conversation come up during the course of this season for a guy who during a couple of stretches of this season looked his age late in game, looked to be running out of gas, went through the shooting slump from beyond the three-point arc here. And so that does become the concern. However, this ultimately is the source, whatever is ultimately the source of this, I should say, the way it's manifesting is a guy this team has come to rely on and hitched its wagon to just may not physically be capable of handling that load in a way that I don't know if he's comfortable with or if he's come to terms with what he is now going to look like. Because, Dad, you know this. We hear all the time the stories of all-time greats, these guys that have been the best player on every court or field they've been on since they were kids, at one point turning on the tape and not recognizing the guy that they're watching. Now, LeBron James came back the other night and still looked like he can go out and do it. And we know the highs are still going to be high. But, man, as the season goes along for LeBron and some of these lows, if they start to look like what we saw in the past month, you wonder how that's going to sit with a guy who all these greats have an ego about what they bring to the game. And certainly LeBron's no exception to that.
Oh yeah, he wants to finish, still near the top of his performance. He doesn't want to. You're right. When you look at film of yourself and don't recognize that player, and while I don't think we're there with LeBron, he's still an incredibly great player. But Father Time always wins, and LeBron has taken it further and playing better than anybody ever has at this age. So he still does have it, but you just wonder if it truly is coming to an end.
It may very well be. So we've got our eye on this situation officially in Los Angeles, but LeBron James back with the Los Angeles Lakers after that 8-day stretch where he went to address, according to JJ Redick and LeBron James, his foot injury that he's been dealing with there. The Golden State Warriors, Dad, did announce a trade. Now, it's not the one that most people had on the tip of their tongues here, but they brought Dennis Schroeder over in a trade with the Brooklyn Nets in exchange for DeAnthony Melton, they announced on Sunday. The Dubs are also receiving a 2025 second-round pick via Miami from the Nets. And so, Dad, Golden State now dipping down a little bit in the standings after a really hot start to the season, trying to inject a little bit of life into this roster here. Ultimately, we'll see what it nets them here, but at the very least, Dennis Schroeder going to come over and try and fit in with this Golden State Warriors offense led by Steph Curry.
Yeah, listen, he's averaging a career high in assists at over 6.5 assists a game. He's averaging a career high in 3-point attempts at 6.5, which will fit well in with Golden State. So I think it's a good addition for a team that we didn't think a ton of coming into the season, and early on, they certainly surprised. Now they're down just a couple of spots ahead of the Lakers, same amount of wins, 14. They have 11 losses, but they were looking good early on, and we were like, oh, were we wrong about this team? But at least they're making a move to try and make a bit of a run because Father Time is playing with their team as well.
Boy, you know what? Father Time playing with their team, but if you're the 76ers, I feel like that's who probably feels worse coming off this weekend here. Golden State's got hope. The Lakers have hope now that LeBron's back here. But my God, I don't know who the 76ers pissed off amongst the basketball gods, but they will not let this team know peace here. As now over the weekend, Dad, the Philadelphia 76ers had Joel Embiid leave a game on Friday with a sinus fracture after he got hit in the face during the Pacers game. And then Jared McCain, who had been phenomenal for them as a rookie, diagnosed with a torn lateral meniscus, arguably been the best guy in this class, averaging over 15 points a game as a rookie, shooting 46% from the field here now. And so you've had Joel Embiid, Paul George, and Tyrese Maxey only play together 3 games and finish only 1 game, that being Sunday's win against Chicago. So this team just never really getting an opportunity, Dad. Now getting close to halfway through the season to see any of what they paid for this offseason manifest on the court. And we've seen this before, Dad. The Brooklyn Nets were kind of similar to this when they brought Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant and James Harden over there. We got to see them play like 7 regular season games together. And when it came time for the postseason, injury and the lack of continuity ultimately damned them. So the writing seems to be on the wall for this year's 76ers team, unfortunately.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, Embiid has played in just 6 games. 6 games, and now dealing with the sinus fracture. We don't know how long he's going to be out. As you mentioned, 3 games the 3 have played and only finished 1. It's been brutal, and it doesn't look like it's going to get any better. The season's going to run out of time before these guys can get any kind of chemistry going together, even if they could. And then you lose, as you mentioned, McCain, your sensational rookie. It's just been a snake-bitten year for the 76ers.
And that's the tough part, is Tyrese Maxey getting injured is not something you count on. You know, when you bet on this core, Paul George, unfortunately, past as predictive, has been injured a bunch before. Certainly Joel Embiid, but Tyrese Maxey and now Jared McCain, who has gotten off to such a great start here, that's the part where you realize, hey, luck is a part of some of these runs that we see, and it may just be running out early for the 76ers. No luck running out. Coming up next as we finish with this, that, and the third for whoever wins the Pop-Tarts Bowl as they unveil an innovation on par with the wheel next. All right, time for this, that, the third. 3 quick stories to send you off into the rest of the day. Make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review the show. Leave us a 5-star rating. And check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. Subscribe to the GoJo and Golic YouTube channel as well. Hit the bell so you know when we're going live each and every morning at 8 Eastern. But if you got to miss us live or any of our great guests, thank you to Pete Sampson from The Athletic and The Independent podcast for joining us to talk about Marcus Freeman's extension as the head coach at Notre Dame football, and our buddy Marshall Newhouse for stopping by to talk about large excellence in hour number 2. If you missed either of those, make sure you check it out wherever you get your podcast or right on the YouTube channel as soon as we get done. Dad, let's start off with this, that, and the third with a pretty cool story out of high school football here. We all remember Teddy Bridgewater, one of the most beloved quarterbacks through his time in college, the NFL. He was an all-time teammate by all accounts, and a career unfortunately brought to an end too soon because of the effect of so many injuries here. And so Teddy Bridgewater went back to Florida and decided he was going to go and bless the next generation. Took over as the head coach at Miami Northwestern, a powerhouse down in southern Florida, and helped lead them to their first state championship since 2019. They get a dominant win, I think in the 3A state title over Reigns, 41-0. So pretty cool to see Teddy Bridgewater get to go back home and help lead those boys to a state title.
Yeah, it's his alma mater, high school. You see coaches going back and coach at their college that they played at, but this is going back to your high school level. It's his first year there, and you're right, they are a powerhouse. And you just go through and have a win like that in a state championship game. And Teddy Bridgewater, such a great dude, what he's helping the next generation of athletes come up through. And I'm sure there's a good amount of D1 players on that team that you'll end up seeing in the NFL. That's the kind of program that is. So it's Teddy's first year. So you got to think the future is bright for Teddy, whether he stays there or has so much success that he starts moving up the coaching ladder.
I say we see it all the time here with former players getting a much quicker avenue to coaching in the college game, a la Deion Sanders and some of the other greats that we've seen there. So either way, there's nothing like going back to your alma mater, whether it's college, some guys that have played for and coached the teams in the professional level, or certainly the high school has a different feel. Speaking of that, Dad, this is kind of a sidebar to that. Did you see the gift that Dolphins linebacker Jordan Brooks gave to Christmas for all the rest of the guys on the Dolphins roster? For anyone that missed this, Jordan Brooks got all of his teammates a custom done version, like a new version of their high school football jerseys. Went back and found every guy's old high school, got all their old numbers out there and gave it to them for Christmas. And what has to be one of the coolest gifts I've ever seen in a locker room, Dad.
One of the greatest, because you're talking about pro athletes who make a ton of money, who can basically get whatever they want, and unbelievably hyped were, though. That was the cool thing. These players were opening their gifts, and it was their high school jersey, and they were running around the locker room going nuts. Yeah, I commented on the tweet about it, saying how cool that was. That would be one of the neatest gifts you could give, because you try and sit there and think, what do you get guys that have basically whatever they want? Well, that's something that they would want and that they would frame, and something I'm sure they haven't thought about in so long, and all of a sudden they're opening up a gift and it's their high school jersey. One of the coolest gifts that I've seen given in a long time.
No doubt about that. Big tip of the hat to Jordan Brooks and the job that he did pulling that off for the rest of the team. Dad, let's move on to that here. A big story for one of the greatest basketball players of all time. Michael Jordan has reportedly finally parted ways with his Chicago area mansion here. The house had been on the market for 12 years, finally sells for $9.5 million here. And this is what I've always wondered, Dad, with these celebrity mansions here. Like, obviously, Michael didn't need the money on this, so it's sitting there for as long as it needed to. Wasn't going to be an issue. But when you're not Michael Jordan and you buy Michael Jordan's house, how much of the Michael Jordan stuff do you want left there, a la the 23 gate that you see out there? Do you buy it, at least in part, because of that nostalgia factor of it? Or are you going to go in there and pluck it all off because it'd be weird to look at that much MJ when you're not MJ?
Well, let's say the potential buying pool is certainly narrowed down because of the price. I would imagine you probably keep some things, unless you just have no affinity at all for the Bulls or Michael Jordan and you just kind of get rid of everything. I mean, this was a house when it first went on the market was listed at $29 million. It sold for $20 million less. I read one of the comments. Somebody said, well, they had to get rid of it because of the property taxes. Do you think Michael Jordan is concerned about property taxes? I mean, seriously, that dude's got more money than for generations. But it's 56,000 square feet. It's on a 7-acre property, indoor basketball court, tennis court, putting green, swimming pool, 9 bedrooms, 19 bathrooms, an office, a library, a cigar room, 5 fireplaces, and a 14-car garage. Let me tell you what, sounds like you got a hell of a deal at $9.5 million for all of that space.
I was just going to say, I walk by houses along the beach here that are, a 20th of the square footage that cost twice as much here. So to get all of that many bathrooms means you get the holy grail, which is one bathroom just for pooping. Like, you get the one bathroom that you can sort of section off and be like, this has, you could probably have multiple just straight pooping bathrooms. Oh. And I understand, yes, you can go to the bathroom in every bathroom, but there are some that you don't want to go and do that kind of damage in when the time comes. And so to have that as a separate portion of the equation because of the surplus of bathrooms, that's the true value of wealth in my mind.
You're going to have multiple pooping bathrooms because you got 56,000 square feet. You're not going to walk to one, which could be on one side of the house where you had to take a 10-minute walk to get there. You're going to have multiple of those bathrooms around the house. I mean, what a property, but which is definitely earmarked with a whole lot of Michael Jordan insignia, no doubt about it. So it will be interesting, and you'll obviously be able to see because the gate is 23. There are things that you can see that are Michael Jordan-esque that if the new owner keeps. But yeah, $29 million to $9.5 million.
Oh no, I feel so bad for Michael Jordan that his sweet house didn't sell for all the money that it was worth here. Aw, shucks. Let's get on to the third and the most important news that we'll actually talk about today here. We mentioned bowl season coming up here, a couple of the nice announcements. Cam Ward in particular, a guy who finished 4th in the Heisman voting, going to elect to play in his bowl game. He and the Miami Hurricanes will be playing the Iowa State Cyclones in the Pop-Tarts Bowl, a bowl game last year that sacrificed the sentient Pop-Tart to the gods and ate it live in front of an audience after the game here. Shout out to Kansas State, who I believe was the winning team that got to eat the humanoid Pop-Tart. This year, Dad, the Pop-Tarts Bowl folks have upped the ante yet again. They partnered with GE Appliances to build a one-of-a-kind toaster trophy. A working trophy that, according to our friend Nicole Arbach over at NBC Sports, is about 1.3 times the size of an oval football and can actually toast a full-size Pop-Tart, not one but two, in the top of this trophy. You see it's got the gilded Pop-Tarts along the side of this. Dad, this is the most beautiful trophy of bowl season, and the fact that it is functional is just a reminder that while the rest of you can poo-poo bowl season and try and say it doesn't have meaning, it spurned this kind of innovation. So what are we really talking about here?
So the Mayo Bowl ran the roost for a couple of years. One year you were involved and you dipped your Oreo cookie in the mayo and ate it, and that went viral. And the mayo, and they dump a bucket of mayo on the winning coach. So that kind of had the nation's attention for a couple of years. Now it's the Pop-Tart Bowl. That's what these bowls need to do. Because listen, the bowls have changed as far as meaning and such. We know that. But how can the sponsor make it an appealing, fun game? And let me tell you, a working toaster trophy is about as innovative as you can be, right? You're already going to eat. You're going to get to choose the flavor of the live Pop-Tart mascot that you eat as the winning team gets. But then you get a trophy where you can toast your Pop-Tarts. It's incredible. It's such a job well done.
I think it's important. Most every team in the country has like a player's lounge where you can go and get snacks and stuff inside the football facility here. If the Pop-Tarts Bowl is doing this right, you're sending that team home with a sizable Pop-Tart investment for the player's lounge. And then if you're the team, you got to keep that toaster trophy in the player's lounge so you can go and celebrate by toasting Pop-Tarts during the offseason. It might not be on the diet, but that's fine. You got time for that. The off-season program's about adding mass anyway. You have to make sure that is a fixture of your facility here. And you need to make sure that this podcast is a fixture of your day. Download, subscribe, rate, review us. Check us out here 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern every Monday through Friday. Thanks so much. Enjoy the doubleheader tonight. We'll talk to you tomorrow.